This video is made possible by Audible. Get a free audiobook from Audible exclusively by going to audible.com/reallifelore.
Russia is huge. The country spans through 11 different time zones across 2 different continents and takes up about 1/8 of all the land on Earth. Despite all of this though, Russia has a critical problem. Russia is shrinking. It's not shrinking in land, Russia has plenty of that. Instead, Russia's shrinking problem is with her population, which has been nearly continuously going down for nearly 30 years now. When you're only looking at the size of countries based on how much land they have, Russia clearly wins that race. But when you factor in Russia's population of about 144 million people, Russia comes in as only the 9th largest country in the world, behind a lot of other countries that are significantly smaller in land, like Pakistan, Nigeria, and most interestingly, Bangladesh, a country that is 118 times smaller than Russia, but has over 20 million more people living there. An even stranger case is the island of Java inside of Indonesia. Java is 123 times smaller than Russia is, but the island's population of 141 million easily compares with Russia's entire population of 144 million. And it didn't used to always be this way. As recently as 1900, the territory of modern Russia itself, without factoring in the rest of the Russian Empire's population at the time, had the 3rd highest population of any country in the world, only remaining behind Qing China and British-controlled India. There were more Russians at the time than there were Americans, but within a century, all of that had completely changed. And the biggest reason why it changed, and the reason why modern Russia is still struggling so much with this problem, is largely because of the Second World War, a war which absolutely devastated the Soviet Union and Russia specifically. In just 4 years of war between 1941 and 1945, the USSR lost a mind-boggling 13.7% of her entire population. If we divide the USSR up into its separate republics, we can see that Russia itself lost 12.7% of all of her people. More than 1 out of every 4 people in Belarus died, while Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Estonia, and Moldova also all took heavy losses, along with other Eastern European countries like Poland. The fact of the matter is Eastern Europe in general took a massive population hit in only 4 years, and the scars that war left upon society here can still be felt today. One statistic that I'm reminded about that is particularly haunting is the one about males born inside of the Soviet Union during 1923. If you were born a boy anywhere inside of the USSR that year, then right at birth, you would only be given a 20% chance of staying alive long enough to see your 23rd birthday in 1946. 80% of all boys born in the USSR that year would be dead by the time of January 1st, 1946, just 23 years later. If we take a look at Russia's population pyramid, a chart which shows people living inside of a country of all ages, you can see healthy growth at first and then a massive gash during the years of World War II. In the years immediately following the war, the population began to rebound, but slowed down in the late 1960s. This slowdown was the first echo of the Second World War. All those millions of young people who died in the 1940s who didn't have any children of their own meant that all of their millions of unborn children weren't alive to have their own children 20 to 25 years later by the time of the late 1960s, which caused population growth to slag. Fast forward another 20 to 25 years to the early 1990s, and you can see the second echo of World War II, where the great-grandchildren of everybody who died during the war would have been born had they survived. The echo of war's effect on population at the time was worsened by the fact that in 1991, the USSR itself collapsed, which threw Russia into deep economic and social upheaval. The birth rate plummeted while the death rate soared. Russia experienced its first actual drop in population since 1945 in 1992, the first year after the Soviet Union's collapse. Massive economic and social hardships experienced in the chaos of that collapse contributed to many people just deciding not to have children or to migrate away from the country, and combined with the second echo of the war, Russia's population continued to shrink every single year from 1992 up until 2012. Russia began to grow again between 2013 and 2015, but then has shrunk more every year from 2016 up to the present. Some of this modern shrinkage can be attributed to the Second World War's third echo on Russian society, which is happening right now. The great-great-grandchildren of the people who died without children in the war would normally be getting born right now, and since that's obviously not happening, it's having a marked effect. But there are other factors at work as well. Another is that Russia is currently experiencing more economic hardships. In 2014, Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula, a move which added over 2 million people into Russia's population pool, and which still wasn't enough to boost Russia's population back to the level seen in 1991. With several sanctions passed against Russia by several countries around the world as a consequence of this annexation, Russia shrunk from the world's 9th largest economy in 2014, a position equal to Russia's rank in population, down to the world's 12th largest economy 5 years later in 2019, with India, Canada, and South Korea overtaking her. Another problem that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that certainly plays a factor, is Russia's geography and the fact that most of it is pretty inhospitable. In modern times, 77% of Russia's entire population, or 110 million people, live inside just the European part of Russia, where the temperatures are more mild. But this part of Russia only accounts for 23% of Russia's land. The rest belongs to a huge region called Siberia, which is the inverse of European Russia. It accounts for 77% of Russia's land, but only 23% of Russia's population. If Siberia was an independent country, it would still be the largest country on Earth in size, but it would have a smaller population than California. Siberia is largely undeveloped and extremely hostile to human habitation, with brutal and long winters with absurdly cold temperatures. Because of this, most of Siberia is completely empty without many human settlements, and as a result, Russia doesn't really have as much land that can be settled by people as it may seem at first. Bangladesh and the island of Java may be over 100 times smaller than Russia in total land, but they arguably have more easily settleable and rich agricultural land than Russia does, which in part helps to explain why they have higher or similar populations. Russia's geography has, in a way, always been one of the country's greatest challenges to overcome, and it continues to be a massive hurdle for the country to overcome in order to expand her population. When you combine all of these factors together, along with other issues like a moderately low rate of immigration in regards to Russia's size, and it begins to paint an overall picture. If the current shrinking population trend continues up until 2050, Russia will find itself in a position where she is only the 14th largest country in the world, far behind countries like Nigeria, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Bangladesh, the Philippines, Mexico, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and even Egypt. Those estimates are the official estimates of the United Nations though, and they're far from the most pessimistic. Other estimates by other demographers believe that if the population shrinkage returns to the same levels that Russia experienced during the 1990s, the population could dwindle down to as little as 110 million, making Russia about equal to what Iran will probably look like at the same time in terms of population numbers. The next 30 years will almost certainly be an interesting and decisive time for the Russian nation.
Understanding Russia is complicated, especially from an outsider's perspective. Winston Churchill once said of Russia that it is a riddle wrapped up in a mystery inside of an enigma. So if you really want to go into some serious depth behind understanding Russian history and civilization, there's no better book than A History of Russia from Peter the Great to Gorbachev, written and narrated by Mark Steinberg. The entire audiobook is offered on Audible, and it's nearly 19 hours long. The book would usually cost $41.95, but you can listen to all of it completely for free at Audible. As you probably know, Audible is a leading provider of audiobooks and other spoken word entertainment. They have an unmatched selection of great titles covering everything from science fiction and fantasy to history and business. I really love audiobooks because you can essentially listen to and learn about anything while you're doing anything. If you're stuck in a commute to work, it can become a great opportunity to listen to your favorite book or subject, and you can actually begin to enjoy yourself. Best of all, though, is that you can start listening with a 30-day free trial and choose to listen to any one book they have for free. It doesn't even have to be about Russian history, but if you're into that, hey, and you'll get 2 Audible originals for free, too. You just need to visit audible.com/reallifelore or text reallifelore to 500-500. And as always, thank you for watching.